The noise in the cell block hit like a thunderclap, metal slamming, voices shouting, and then the sound of something crashing hard against the wall. Then silence. The kind of silence that made your skin prickle. Inside Rikers Island, that silence meant only one thing: trouble. Jordan Hayes stood at the front of his cell, one hand gripping the cold steel bars. Down the tier, he could see two guards rushing by, their radios blaring, boots pounding the floor. Someone whispered, "They're fighting again in C block." The lights flickered, buzzing overhead like angry insects. It had started like any other day. Same breakfast, same count, same noise. But normal on Rikers could turn into chaos without warning. The world outside thought they knew what went on here. They said fights happened every day, that the guards didn't care, that inmates ran wild. But Jordan knew better. Myths were easy to believe. Reality was much harder to live through. A loud shout echoed down the hall. "Back up! Everybody back!" Jordan leaned forward just enough to see what was happening. Two men were locked in a fight. One tall and wild-eyed, the other bleeding from the nose. Guards were trying to pull them apart, but the crowd was too thick. Someone threw a tray. The sound of metal hitting concrete echoed through the corridor. Jordan's cellmate, Darnell, stood up from his bunk, watching the chaos unfold. "They'll call a lockdown," he muttered. Another guard shouted, "He's got a weapon." That word, weapon, sent a chill through the air. The other inmates backed away from their bars, but everyone was still watching. A sharp bang echoed as a guard slammed a baton against a door. Then came the alarm, a deep wailing siren that filled every inch of the cell block with red light. Code red. "Lockdown," someone yelled through a radio. Jordan pressed his back against the bars, watching as guards swarmed the corridor. The floor was slick with spilled food and milk. One of the officers slipped, catching himself on a table leg as another dragged an inmate to the ground. The air smelled like sweat, bleach, and something burnt. The scene looked like every rumor Jordan had ever heard: chaos, violence, control breaking apart. But from where he stood, he could see the truth in real time. The guards weren't cruel monsters. They were scared too. Outnumbered, sweating, and shouting orders to keep the block from falling apart. A voice came over the intercom, deep and steady. "All units, hold positions. Contain the area. Repeat, contain the area." The siren faded, replaced by the heavy sound of doors locking one after another. Jordan let out a shaky breath. "They say Rikers is all myths," he said quietly. "But it's worse than the stories. It's real." Darnell sat down, shaking his head. "It's just another day, man. You'll get used to it." But Jordan wasn't sure anyone really got used to Rikers. That morning had started calm, almost peaceful. The weak light from the East River filtered through the barred window, painting the floor in faint gray lines. Jordan sat on his bunk, waiting for breakfast. He'd been inside for 5 months, long enough to see that Rikers wasn't what people thought it was. The myths made it sound like a war zone, but most days were just long, boring, and quiet. When the doors opened for breakfast, the noise returned. Men filed into line, trays in hand. The food was always the same: watery oatmeal, hard toast, cold milk. Rumor said the guards ate real meals in their break room. Maybe it was true. Maybe not. On Rikers, no one knew what to believe. At one of the tables, 2 men started arguing, not about something big, just about food. "That's my cornbread," one said, pushing the other's tray. Darnell whispered, "It's always the small things that start big trouble here." The guards were watching, tense but quiet. When one of the inmates shoved the other, everything changed. A tray hit the floor. A chair followed. Within seconds, shouting filled the hall. Jordan ducked behind a table as the fight spread. Guards moved in fast, shouting commands, batons out. He saw one of them, Officer Daniels, a rookie, trying to separate 2 men twice his size. "Back off," Daniels shouted, but his voice cracked halfway. He didn't look mean. He looked nervous. Jordan realized then that the stories about Rikers guards being heartless didn't tell the whole truth. Some were harsh, sure, but others were just trying to make it through the day, same as the inmates. After 10 minutes, it was over. The fighters were dragged away, one limping, the others spitting curses. The smell of bleach and sweat filled the air again. Everyone else stood still, silent, waiting for orders. The warden's voice came over the speaker. C block, full lockdown until further notice. Jordan sighed. Told you, Darnell said quietly. Lockdown every time. They walked back to their cells, the red lights still flashing across the walls. Back inside, Jordan sat down, breathing hard. People think this place is just fights and chaos, he said softly. But the truth is worse. You never know when the next one's coming. Darnell nodded, lying back on his bunk. Yeah. And sometimes, it's not the fights you should be afraid of. It's the quiet after. Jordan didn't answer. He stared through the bars at the empty hallway. The guards were still shouting orders somewhere down the block, but it already felt distant. Then, just when he thought it was over, another crash echoed through the corridor, metal on concrete. A guard yelled something Jordan couldn't make out. The lights flickered again, turning the hall red. And in that heartbeat of silence before the next alarm, Jordan realized something. The myths about Rikers weren't just wrong. They were missing the scariest part of all. No one, not the inmates, not the guards, was ever really in control. The crash came from the far end of the tier, sharp, loud, and final. It sounded like metal folding in on itself. Then came the shout that made every inmate freeze where they stood. Officer down. The words echoed down the concrete hallway like thunder rolling through a storm. Jordan Hayes stepped forward, gripping the bars of his cell so hard his hands hurt. Two guards ran past in a blur, radios blaring, boots slapping the wet floor. Down the hall, he saw orange jumpsuits and blue uniforms colliding in chaos. Darnell stood beside him, his voice barely above a whisper. Same story, different day. The lights flashed red, filling the air with a dull hum. From where Jordan stood, he saw two guards kneeling over someone, a third officer laying on the floor, motionless. Another guard shouted into his radio, calling for backup. For a moment, the noise was deafening, shouting, the stomp of boots, the buzz of keys. But then Captain Morales appeared. His voice cut through the confusion like a blade. Everyone stand down. Nobody moves. Even from inside the cells, you could feel his authority. The inmates quieted. The guards froze in place. Morales crouched down beside the fallen officer, then turned sharply. Get medical up here now. Two medics pushed through the crowd, rolling a stretcher. When they lifted the injured guard, Officer Daniels, Jordan caught a glimpse of his face. Eyes open, but filled with something that looked like fear more than pain. As they passed, Jordan whispered to himself, "He's just a kid." The medics hurried down the corridor, and Morales barked orders again. Lock it down. Every cell now. Steel slammed shut in waves, clang, 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 echoing like gunfire through the block. When Jordan's door sealed, the noise outside grew muffled, leaving only the low hum of fluorescent lights. Darnell sat on his bunk. They say guards run this place, he muttered. But I think this place runs everybody. Jordan didn't answer. He just stared through the narrow gap between the bars. A guard walked past, his shoulders sagging, face tight with exhaustion. The man looked less like someone in charge and more like someone just trying to survive. Hours passed. The block stayed silent except for the faint hum of the lights and the occasional clink of a key ring. When night finally came, the intercom crackled to life. Attention, code green. Situation contained. The voice faded, but the fear didn't. Jordan lay on his bunk, staring at the ceiling. The myths said life in Rikers was non-stop violence. But the truth was stranger. It was the waiting, the endless pressure, the silence that felt like it was watching you. Somewhere down the corridor, a low humming started. The same song someone always sang when the noise finally stopped. So human. Darnell smiled faintly. That guy hums every time we make it through another night, he said. Jordan closed his eyes. The humming echoed off the steel, soft and steady. It was the only gentle sound in a place built from noise and fear. The next morning, the air felt heavier than usual. Guards moved slowly, eyes tired, voices quiet. Words spread fast. Officer Daniels had been transferred off the island for treatment. No one knew if he'd come back. In the cafeteria, the chatter was low and tense. A few inmates whispered about what had happened. Some said the officer got attacked trying to break up a fight. Others claimed it was a setup. But Jordan didn't believe any of them. He saw how the guards moved, heads down, no jokes, no small talk. The whole place felt like it was holding its breath. Later, while scrubbing floors on work duty, Jordan overheard two officers talking near the doorway. "You ever think about leaving?" one said quietly. The other chuckled, but it wasn't funny. "Every day. But the island doesn't let you go easy." Their words stuck in his head. The myths said the guards were cruel. The truth was they were trapped too. By afternoon, the tension started to fade, replaced by the dull rhythm of routine. Repeat. But the peace never lasted long on Rikers Island. As evening came, the warden's voice echoed through the intercom. "Due to recent incidents, new restrictions are in effect. No gatherings outside assigned areas. Curfew is now 1 hour earlier." Another rule. Another reminder that control was slipping. Jordan returned to his cell, tired but awake. Outside, through the small slit of a window, the faint glow of Manhattan flickered across the water, close enough to see, too far to touch. Darnell lay back on his bunk. "You ever think they'll shut this place down?" Jordan looked at the ceiling. "They say that every year." "Yeah," Darnell said softly. "But it never happens." Silence filled the cell. Then, from somewhere deep in the block, the same humming started again. Faint. Familiar. The song of survival. Jordan closed his eyes. In that quiet hum, he could hear what no one ever said out loud, that life behind bars wasn't just about violence or punishment. It was about endurance. About living through the myths and finding the truth for yourself. The lights flickered once, dimmed, and then steadied. Outside, the city lights shimmered like distant stars. Inside, a door slammed shut. The cycle began again.